Welcome to your 30th tutorial in C programming. I'm really surprised that I've made it this far, but, guess I got lucky. Alright, so now that you know more about the null terminator in strings, and since we learned a while ago how to create your own function, we're going to create a function that will return the length of a string. And we're going to be using a lot of the stuff that we've learned in the past to do that. So the first thing, we're going to create our function. And we'll create functions that we usually will create above the main function. And we're going to call this string length, string underscore length. And the first thing we need to give it is the type of data it's going to return. And in this case, for the length of a string, it's going to be an integer. A string can't have like 1.5 characters. It's always an integer. And then the name. And it's going to have to accept a string. And a string, as you know, is just an array of characters. So it's going to accept an array of characters, and we'll call this S. And we have the empty brackets to let it know that it can accept a string of any number of characters. Alrighty, so now our function is set up. Now, we're going to have to count the number of characters in the string. And we know that we've gotten to the end of the string when we reach the null terminator character, which, as you know, is represented by the integer 0. So we're going to loop through each character, and we're going to test it to see if that character equals 0. When we do get 0, we're going to return the total number of characters that we've seen so far. So all we need is an integer, and we can call it length. And we can set this equal to 0, but we'll do that in our for loop. For length is going to start at 0. And we need to keep testing while the length character of our string is not equal to 0, which, as we know, is the null terminator character. So we're just accessing this element in our array of characters, or our string, and as long as it's not equal to the null terminator character, we're going to increment the length variable. And as soon as this is equal to the null terminator character, the for loop is going to exit, and then we can return that length integer and return it to the program, the part of the program that asked for the length of the string. So return length. Now, you've probably noticed something, and that is this body of the for loop, there's no code in this body. And that's because we don't need any code in the body. Everything is done here, and no code needs to be executed in the body. And when that happens, when you have an empty body for a loop, you don't need these braces. We can get rid of them. All you need is a single semicolon. And let me put some spacing here to make it easier to see. This single semicolon just means that we have no body to our for loop, and there's no code inside of it to be run. So if we did everything correctly, this function should give us the length of a string. And because we don't increment this variable when we get to the null terminator character, the length of the string does not include the null terminator character. So if the string is hello, it would return 5 and not 6, even though the null terminator character is stored in memory. But for all practical purposes, we never use that character except for testing to find the end of a string. So there's really it doesn't make logical sense. Is there any other kind of sense? Is there illogical sense? I don't think so. But it doesn't make sense to include that in the length. So let's create a string, and we'll print out what this function returns. So let's have hello world. You're probably totally sick of seeing that phrase, hello world, but you'll have to live with it for a little bit longer. And now let's print out the result of calling this function. So printf And this is an integer that we're printing out. And we're going to give it s. And let's see what this gives us. And it gives us 13 for the length of that string. And let's count the characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So it did indeed get that correct. And in fact, we don't actually need to create this variable. We could have just put it directly here. And let's see what it does for the empty string. The empty string is just the null terminator character and nothing else. So let's see if our program gives the correct answer for this, because it should give an answer of 0. There are no characters in our string. And it even works, which is pretty impressive. And in this tutorial, you have learned how to create a function that will count the length of any string. Now, there's something you need to know, because we're going to be doing some of the stuff relating to this in future tutorials. There are libraries of functions that are already built into the C programming language, and this printf function that we've been using to print out data is a function, and it's included in this library that we just included into our program. If we didn't have this line, it wouldn't be able to find this function, and it would give us an error when we tried to compile our code. Now, there's already built-in functions in C for working with strings, and we'll probably go over some of them soon, but it's important to know how to do these things yourself. So there's already a function in C that's called strlen for getting the length of a string, but it's important that you know how to write it yourself. So this is pretty much what the C language would have for that strlen, for the string length function that it has built in. So now when you use that program, when you use that string length function built into C, you know that this is what it's doing internally. Alrighty, so I hope you've learned something in this tutorial, and I'll see you again next time.